Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, Easter Monday, if you count Monday as an Easter holiday day. Why not? Sure, Monday, Easter Monday, April 21st, 2025. And I guess from among the news items related to Easter, the Pope has died, which is a bit of a surprise. I think he was not doing particularly well, but this is sort of the opposite of the news you expect over an Easter weekend. But that is the news, and what can I tell you? One of the good ones, I guess, is gone. And much less likely, it seems to me, like there would be a friendly, progressive American Pope in the offing. And he was, of course, American in the greater sense, and the first, I believe, Latin American or American at all Pope. So, a real historical achievement there, but now sadly having come to an end. And what can I tell you? The last thing he had to do was visit with JD Vance, which might be enough for just about anybody. I did see somebody pointing out, by the way, there's more evidence that JD Vance killed the Pope than there is that any of the people that they're putting away in prison in El Salvador is actually a member of MS-13 or Tren de Aragua or anything like that. But at least, it's not conclusive, and it's not proof. It's just evidence. What can I tell you? Anyway, wow, what a weekend, and another one. And in the books, and we're back on the clock with Donald Trump. Usually, though, the weekdays are the slower and more controlled as they entertain Trump in the White House Oval Office with various documents to sign, some bogus, others less so, some with actual force behind them, others just busy work, essentially, for him. The weekend, well, all sorts of activity, and not as much from him in terms of pronouncements direct from his lips, but it is becoming increasingly clear that Donald Trump is not the guy in control at the White House. A number of stories over the last couple of days that have made it really clear that he's just not the guy making the decisions. In other news related to that, I guess I'm thinking back to the Signal Gate thing, which is still a live controversy, and now given new life by the fact that it turns out is now being reported. Pete Hic-seth had a second Signal chat going at the time, one of his own making, in which he was sharing the same details of the same attack, only this time with people who had no business whatsoever finding out about these. I mean, not that the Atlantic editor did either, but that at least was a mistake. This was on purpose, just sharing details of an upcoming attack with friends and family and who knows what else, neighbors, drinking buddies. I got no idea who else is on this thing. There's reporting on it. I don't know if they have the full roster of the chat or not. And I also don't know whether it's related to any of the, now 3, maybe even a 4th firing at the Pentagon of Hic-seth underlings in a desperate attempt, I don't know, maybe to divert attention from the fact that this is the least capable, least qualified, and I don't know what else. We need some other superlatives there for Pete Hic-seth. He's really in way over his head on this one, and what can I tell you? We'll try and round it all up. There's plenty of other things happening. Man, I don't even know. Maybe at this point, we just probably say, Greg Dworkin, he's here, he's ready to go. I need to find you a new fanfare for today, but we got your old one ready to go. I like this one. And I think it's made all the better because it's not your favorite. Somehow it's funnier that way.
I still think you should do it backwards.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you go. Sure. Right. Oh, you know what? Oh,
you're tempting me to go. I should go now so you can play it.
I do have another one. I just realized I forgot to engineer up. I had another suggestion. So, okay, we'll try that one on Wednesday. Assuming there's a
Assuming
Wednesday and there's no
Wednesday.
apocalypse and yada
Yeah.
yada. So, all
Big
right.
assumption these days. That's a big if, but I think
Yeah,
maybe,
I know it's
maybe we could do it.
okay. We'll I'll make a note to myself to ignore later. All
Right.
right.
So there's two big stories.
Yeah. All right.
And a
What are
third
they?
smaller story. The two big stories, of course, are the death of Pope Francis, which I won't spend as much time on. Not an expert in any way, shape, or form in this area, but there are some excellent comments and
Okay.
pieces that I will
He
mention.
seemed a fine fellow.
Pete Hic-seth and his, the fact that Hic-seth actually set that chat up himself, probably before he was confirmed, he just never canceled it and just continued to, loose lips sink ships, continue the chat.
He just wanted to say
it's
that
just
really
outrageous.
was true.
Absolutely outrageous.
I'm looking around. I didn't see any ships sink, so I guess it's all right.
Yeah, I still have lips, and I checked. They're tight. They're not
Wow.
loose. So okay.
I didn't realize. I haven't read the story yet. I just kind of discovered it this morning. I mean, I guess I should have anticipated it. Easy to guess.
I have a piece from Politico on that. Former top Pentagon spokesperson details month from hell inside the agency. So we'll go into that as well. But again, the other stories include things like the Trump protests over the weekend.
Yes,
My friend Will Bunch wrote up what happened in Haverford with 80 and 90-somethings taking to the road to protest Trump.
It's a very
I
popular
mentioned
theme.
it this morning. One of the things that Will mentions is that he interviewed a fellow named Peter Stern, 89 years old.
Yeah.
And he is a Holocaust survivor. He was born in 1936. And, he was there to protest. Now, it happens, I know Pete, because he lived in this town before he moved to Pennsylvania.
Huh.
And really good guy.
How do you like that?
And a friend of mine.
How do you like that?
So I mentioned on Daily Kos, that there's a lot of boomers like Pete, who feel the same way. So, you have issues with boomers. I understand. Nobody yells at silent generation. Pete is actually silent generation because of his 89 years old.
I see.
And so some of the commenters who like to split hairs, the pedants revolt, fewer, not less, were mad because I said there's boomers like Pete, and they said, no, Pete's silent. Well, we share 11 characteristics, but the 12th is that he's older.
Yeah.
So there are people like Pete, except for that. And they were mad because, like, oh, you should take the L and change your word. No, there's a lot of boomers like Pete.
Well, all
there
right.
are. And, I will change my tone when I see you, give the silent generation the same hard time you give boomers, which you do all the time. And that was my point.
Okay,
but,
silent.
Whatever.
I guess. I don't know. Okay, I mean, really, least of our problems. You don't have to go nitpicking.
Arguing about stuff like this is how we lose elections.
No, it isn't. There you go.
It is. It is argument fun.
Okay.
Because look, I mean, there are a lot of boomers like Pete.
Yeah.
Even though Pete's
a
not
lot
a
of
boomer.
boomers do like Pete.
That's not a hard concept.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of people, and you're going to find ones that don't meet your expectations.
There's a lot of over 60s at this protest. There's a lot of over 60s at a lot of these protests.
It skews way old. It really does.
We remember Nixon. We remember, a lot of stuff that wasn't so great. And, we don't remember, unless you're a silent, Joe McCarthy. But we remember references to Joe McCarthy and how difficult it was in the Vietnam War era.
Yeah.
Just as in the Iraq era, to protest or be against the war.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of this stuff that's important.
Yes, and it all comes back to play now and reminds every generation of their own brush with this stuff, whether they took it on or not. They certainly remember. Look, there's been protests in every generation, not always of the same magnitude, but and this one does skew older
give
because
the oldies a break. I know you want them out of Congress. I know you want them to give up democratic leadership, but they have their place, they have their role.
Sure, there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't hurt you to have a younger member of Congress and an older skewing protest. That's good. You'll want that.
There's nothing wrong with having younger members at the protest.
No, not at all. Just They're very busy,
But
I guess. I don't know.
oldies are in the habit of knowing,
Hmm.
when and how to protest. The youngies, not used to
Yes.
it.
And remind you, I do
We'll
see.
just say the same thing online. It's just
Hmm?
as good. And, in some
Yeah.
cases it is actually.
Good advice that I have seen circulating more and more these days, like Frederick Douglass, is embrace the cringe. If it makes you worry about the nature or the uh, age cohort or the methodology of the protest or the fact that people are having a good time protesting when they should be angry, one of the things to build a mass movement, there will be cringe. Get past it, or else you'll just find yourself at home on your computer nitpicking everyone else's work.
Yeah.
So,
In
okay.
any case, back to the Pope,
Hmm.
or the former Pope, I guess I should say.
Once a pope, always a pope. Like
The late
Marines,
Pope.
I
The
think.
late
All right.
Pope.
Well,
Yep.
yes.
Larry the Cat, account on Twitter,
Oh.
number 10 Cat,
Huh.
notes the last time the roles of Pope and Archbishop of Canterbury were both vacant at the same time
Hmm.
was 333 years ago in 1691.
Wow.
So clearly
Look what
a
happened then.
precedent-setting Pope for many, many reasons.
Uh,
This is the least of it.
Number
Uh,
10 cat is that's the British Prime Minister's residence cat. Is
yeah.
that the number
hmm
10? Okay.
Yeah, Larry the Cat.
Very good. All right. I'm not up to date on the British cats.
Right. It's like a Devin Nunes cow. It's just one of those
Okay.
uh,
It's out there.
accounts that's out
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
E.J. Dion, who's very devout himself,
Ah.
Pope Francis' entire approach was prefigured by the name he chose, honoring St. Francis of Assisi. He said
Hmm.
he wanted to identify with the man of poverty, the man of peace, the man who loves and protects creation. He became that man. And David
Hmm.
French comes at this from a different angle, both of them noting what we've lost and how difficult it is to, even think about replacing.
Okay.
Pope Francis transformed Catholicism and its priorities, says E.J.
Hmm.
Uh, Dion.
Yeah.
But David French says, were you raised in a church that fears the world or loves its neighbors?
Hmm. Who,
And that's
me?
something
Oh.
else.
All right. Okay. Yeah. That's true. It's a big split in Catholic communities, particularly here in the United States. There's a real, hot streak of people who, do live in those sort of prefer the old line and rigid and I guess presumably more fearful Catholic Church, hoping for it to come back in some way.
Yeah.
I
So,
hope not.
he points out they're really different. And
Yeah.
depending upon which worldview you look at,
Hmm.
it just feels like a completely different faith. And Pope Francis obviously represented the love thy neighbor part of it. So
Yeah.
absolutely, positively will be missed. It can't be a surprise or a shock. He was obviously quite ill. I'm actually a little surprised he was able to get out of the hospital and get through Easter, but he did.
Hmm.
And so I'm sure that's something he wanted very badly. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and he made it in just in time, as noted elsewhere. For I don't know, it's been a long time since both the papacy and archbishopric, I guess, of Canterbury both vacant at the same time. I don't know how long it's been since Eastern Orthodox Easter was on the same day either, but a big, uh, coming together of the various threads there, momentous time, and maybe that had just I don't know, maybe that was enough for him. He just said,
Mm.
I've lived to see it all. It's I don't know. To me, it's huge. Of course, Eastern Orthodox. What am I going to do in 2 weeks? I haven't got jokes now.
Right. So for those of faith, obviously a devastating loss. And right.
Yes, I know. I think I'm being inappropriate at the moment. I just realized. Oh, well. Anyway, devastating loss. Yes, you're
Yes.
right. I
No
should be
fanfares,
there.
please. Right.
Okay. All right.
But
Moving along.
we'll see what happens because life goes on, as Pope
Yes.
Francis would have been the first one to say. And I'm not up on popology, so I don't know
Oh,
about black and white smoke and the
I
process, the
did learn about
conclave,
that.
how all that stuff works. I
Hmm.
don't know.
Oh, no one knows how it works. I just know
Yeah,
that they have
well,
the smoke signal thing, and it's about as what you would guess. Black smoke didn't get an answer. That's supposed to
And
be
white smoke you
bad.
do, but
Yeah.
they have to gather.
Yeah.
They have to, do
Hmm.
whatever they do in order to decide these
Dress up
sorts of
in the
things.
red outfits, get together, vote. They vote. That's good. Voting is nice.
Cardinals.
Yeah.
Cardinals.
Right. Not the kind I'm feeding out here. And if they are,
Right.
you need to move along. Get to Rome.
My title for the abbreviated pundit roundup today was Pete
Mm.
Hegseth remains a scandal, one
He
among
is.
many,
Yeah.
which is true. So we were talking about that, but this is a really fascinating piece, which I think is worth spending a little time on. This is from
Okay.
Politico, and it's by a Trumpy guy, John
Ew.
Ullyot, Ullyot, former chief Pentagon spokesperson,
Mm.
led communications at the National Security Council and the Department of Veterans Affairs in Trump's first term. He
Okay.
resigned from the Pentagon last week. He was a staunch
Mm.
Hic-seth supporter until this article,
Oh. Uh, okay. Till this
which is why
article.
it's so interesting. It's
Yeah.
been a month of total chaos at the Pentagon, he
What?
says, from leaks of sensitive operational plans. See, my point is you can't accuse him of being one of those lefty, you know,
Oh,
person
I
with a
see.
grudge.
Okay. Now, I guess is he became a less staunch supporter shortly before beginning work on this article.
And sorrow rather than anger, you
Yes.
know. From leaks of sensitive operational plans to mass firings, the dysfunction is now a major distraction for the president, who deserves better. I mean, you're going to have to remember who he is. So you're going to have to suck up a lot of this garbage he
Mm.
puts in here. President
Okay.
Donald Trump has a strong record of holding his top officials to account. It's hard to see
Heh,
Defense
no.
Secretary Pete Hegseth remaining in his role for much longer.
That
Now,
has been
if
hard
you
for a
have
long
to say
time.
the first part in order to get the point across to Trump,
Mm.
about the second part. And how do you do that? You write this article and then get on Fox so that he watches TV and hears it.
Mm.
Well, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And again, remember when a lot of conservatives write articles, they put a lot of red meat in up front, so you keep reading.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll say, "Oh, this is anti-Trump. I'm not reading this."
Right.
So you have to suck up to him in order to, get them engaged to at least read down to the third paragraph.
Okay.
The latest flashpoint is a near collapse inside the Pentagon's top ranks. On Friday, Hegseth fired three of his most loyal senior staffers, Senior Advisor Dan Caldwell, Deputy Chief of Staff Darren Selnick, and Colin Carroll, Chief of Staff to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. In the aftermath, the Defense Department officials working for Hegseth tried to smear the aides anonymously to reporters claiming they were fired for leaking sensitive information.
Yeah, that was
But
the
none of
claim.
this is true. None
Oh.
of it's true, he says. While the
Oh.
department said it would conduct polygraph tests, one of the three has been given a lie detector test. In fact, at least one of them has told former colleagues investigators advised him he was about to be cleared. Unfortunately, Hegseth's team had developed a habit of spreading flat out, easily debunked falsehoods anonymously about their
Go.
colleagues on their way out the door.
Hmm.
Politico reported that Hegseth's chief of staff, Joe Casper, was leaving his role. Casper had requested the investigation into the Pentagon leaks, which reportedly included military operational plans for the Panama Canal and a
Another
pause in
one.
the collection of intelligence for Ukraine. Hegseth is now presiding over a strange and baffling purge that will leave him without his two closest advisors of over a decade. And
Hmm.
without chiefs of staff for him and his deputy, more firings may be coming, according to rumors in the building. In short, the building is in disarray. Now,
Yes.
fortunately, I was not a victim of this purge like some of the others. I'm a longtime backer of the secretary and then goes and, burnishes
Ooh.
his backing the secretary credentials, which you don't need to go into.
Yeah. Sucks. Anyway.
But even strong backers of the secretary like me must admit the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration. Now, I'm citing this article because I know there are people that say, oh, nothing ever happens, nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens till it does,
Well, yeah.
you know.
And yeah,
So
we've been on that. That's had
Hesketh
other
is not
themes like it.
safe.
Good. I mean, he's terrible. And it's a hard thing to say. I mean, I know he's trying to burnish his credentials and make sure people keep reading, but it's impossible to. How could you look at what's going on and ever? Well, you could certainly say, I used to be a strong supporter. But
Look,
yeah,
you
even
know,
though,
we'll
what would you be
never
a strong,
understand.
yeah, what would you be a strong supporter of? He hasn't
Right.
done anything for you to support. He's been on television,
It could be as
gabbing.
simple as I'm afraid because they're going to hurt me, so I have to write it
Yeah,
this way. You just don't know what's in somebody's head when they write stuff like this.
I guess.
He says first there was Signalgate,
Then
and
there was
then that was
more.
just the beginning. The Wall Street Journal and other outlets reported Hic-seth brought his wife, a former Fox News producer, to two meetings with foreign military counterparts. You mentioned that, where sensitive information was discussed. Next, the Pentagon set up a top secret briefing for Elon Musk, who has extensive business interests in China.
Right. And it was
Then
about
came the
China.
purges. And then the New York Times reported that Hegseth shared details about the Yemen strike in another signal chat that included his wife and brother and also his personal lawyer.
Hmm.
That was in the
What?
story too.
Oh.
There were very likely more shoes to drop. I mean, none of those should have been. That's the chat that was set up prior to his
Yeah.
being
Okay. All right. Well, that helps
confirmed.
explain it
But none of
because
them, should have had,
it's
uh,
wrong.
discussions about any of this stuff.
No, that material didn't belong there. And if his lawyer was, I hope his lawyer said something. This should not be
And
happening.
And then this guy says
Yeah.
there are very likely more shoes to drop in short order, with even bigger bombshell stories coming this week. Key Pentagon
Wow.
reporters have been telling sources privately. One reason the
Oh,
American
that's what
people
this
gave
is.
Trump a conclusive victory, which it wasn't, last November, is that he's not a go along, get along creature of the Beltway like many of
Oh,
his
come on.
predecessors, but a shrewd businessman who expects results. Just ask all the cabinet secretaries he's fired.
Right.
Yeah.
Only the best people, et cetera, et cetera.
So he goes on to say Hegseth has to go because the president deserves better. Look, if you have to frame it that way to get Hegseth to go, I'm okay with that.
All right. I mean, if it works, sure. Yeah,
If it
even
works.
we don't need him to take care of this, but whatever. I mean, okay, it's certainly good hedging there. You have to remember the guy's not going to be your pal, but if he's going to help push Hegseth out the door, I assume better for all of us. I love the fact that
More
Hegseth is an
scandals? I'd
open
like to hear
wound.
about it.
Yeah,
Tell me more about that part.
right.
Do a follow-up article listing all the scandals that are about
True.
to
That'd
come.
be
I'm
good.
perfectly okay with that.
That would be good. Yeah, I did see that hinted at last night that I saw. I didn't know what was going on exactly, but people chattering about, well, what is this, all this nonsense about them having more bombshells to drop? Just drop them already. What are you waiting to
Well,
write a
I think it
book?
came from this article. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if it
think
came from
so.
anywhere else.
I think that's it. The way it was phrased was so familiar that that's what people were talking about. I don't know whether there really
Yeah,
are or not, but
yeah.
it's clear that it came from this. Okay.
But, that's why I'm on the show, right? So I could tell you that's what people were talking about.
Yeah. Okay. I'm okay. I think we're up to date on that one. Oh, look, I see somebody. The Philadelphia Inquirer's front page, the physical paper with the fold,
Yep.
has it such. I don't know what the rest of the headline is, but it looks like the top story is the Pope story, and with the fold, you can't see the rest of the headline. It just says Pope meets Vance, then,
Oh,
and that's it. so,
what
so
happened
it's like,
next?
yeah, well, you'll never guess it. Funny story. You should ask that. So all right, I don't know what, but like they're blaming it on Vance, and I'm okay with that. All right. So Hegseth, the clock is starting, ticking.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll wait and see. I mean, like I said, I enjoy the open wound for Trump, but we can't. It's very dangerous to have this
I saw
guy
Pete
as
Hegseth routinely
as
referred to as a DUI hire.
yeah, yeah. He's awful. I mean, it
I
was a
mean,
terrible idea start to finish. I know that.
now there was a quote from Mitch McConnell
Very
at the
Trumpy.
time that he was voting on Hegseth. McConnell voted
Ah,
no,
yeah.
and
Okay,
unfortunately
reminding
was
us. Thank
only
you.
able to bring one or two other people with him.
Hmm.
So I think Hegseth was the 50-50 confirmation.
Could
But it's
be
still astounding to me that
pretty close. Yeah.
uh, that more Republicans didn't vote against him, given how unqualified he was. But
Yes.
McConnell wrote a lovely piece, explaining his vote, saying that we have 3 million people he's responsible for. This is not a time to screw around with American security
Yeah.
in a dangerous world. He's absolutely unqualified. And, he can't do the job. So I'm voting no. And again,
Yes.
the astounding thing to me is not McConnell, it's everybody else. Like, how did you vote for this guy? He's
Yeah.
awful.
It's a real. puzzle. And as I recall,
the only one worse than him is RFK. The only one worse than him is Tulsi Gabbard. The only one worse than her is Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And as I recall, the key vote, because everybody was a key vote because it was 50-50, came down to like finally Joni Ernst too, like one of the people who had every reason in the world to vote no, but unlike McConnell, voted yes, which I don't even know how you live with yourself. It made no sense at the time. And then he went on to I think, hopefully brief career as the worst defense secretary ever. It's really quite remarkable. And it's a, I don't know. I mean, I guess thank God for the, residual remains of the world order where everybody is still convinced it's a bad idea to take on the United States militarily. All the hardware is there and the people are there, but it's a big question mark about whether or not, any of the logistics could come together in legitimate defense of anything at this point. We're in danger. So, all right, good. I'm glad that the clock is running on him.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Okay. When? We need to have a date.
We'll see when we see. 2 weeks.
All right. Yeah, probably true. Okay. Well, yeah,
or a Scaramucci. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, that's about how long he's been. He was a little longer in office than a Scaramucci, but yeah, you're measuring it in those terms. And I guess all of his underlings being fired, it has to be a prelude to something. And I mean, I assume he's just firing everybody in sight in an effort to not be the one that's next, but I've never seen that work. So
yeah,
who knows? All right, well, we'll be back in 2 minutes. We'll regroup and start a signal chat and try and figure out where to go next.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Coast, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Hey, what? Welcome back to the show. You too, Greg. We're discussing clips that we can be playing. Yeah, everybody should be getting a new phone with encrypted apps like Signal. All right, we were discussing where we were going next, and I think the settlement was Chris Van Hollen, who became very famous this weekend.
So I have a clip to play.
Right, I got to go find it.
I'm using the meeting chat.
Okay, let's see. All right, that's about 9 clicks away, I think. There's one. Okay. X.com. I've heard of that.
Bulwark Online.
Okay. And so they have a clip of, is it Van Hollen that's there? Okay. Yeah. All right, that's good. Let me pause them here. And well, maybe I can just play it right off of here. I don't have to.
Let's see.
Well, let's see. I got to turn the sound up. And he's on.
Put a quarter in the back. And
right. Oh, yeah. I own this app on a licensing basis from Starlink. Let's see. So what show is this one? This is ABC This Week. Okay. And Van Hollen with Jonathan Karl is their guy, right?
Looks like.
He is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right.
I am not defending.
I hear
it.
Okay.
I'm defending the rights of this man to due process. And the Trump administration has admitted in court that he was wrongfully detained and wrongfully deported. My mission and my purpose is to make sure that we uphold the rule of law, because if we take it away from him, we do jeopardize it for everybody else. And I do want to point out, Carl, yes, the Trump administration is trying to change the story. They're trying to detract attention. Here's where they should put their facts. They should put it before the court. They should put up or shut up in court. Because Judge Zinnes, who's the district court judge in this case, said, and I quote, they put no evidence linking Abrego Garcia to MS-13 or to any other terrorist activity, unquote. She says that a couple times in her decision. So, Mr. President and Republicans and anybody involved with this, take your facts to court. Don't put everything out on social media. As to his wife is the one who is asking us all to bring him home so his rights can be respected.
And in fact, even if he is a gang member, that doesn't mean you don't have rights, due process rights.
Well, exactly. But again, the place to litigate that is in the courts, and they've not put the evidence before the judge in the case. So again, put up or shut up in court.
Okay.
Okay,
I think that's quite right. I have to. Yes. Yeah. Well, good points made, obviously. I mean, they're very strong talking points. I'm glad he did such a good job and breaking all the records. He was on every Sunday show, I think.
Yeah, it was good. But, you know, there's a lot to be said about this. First of all, you hear all the time Peter Baker, AP, you know, do this, quote, analysis, end quote, and wind up both siding the issue that Trump and his cronies, especially Stephen Miller, think this is an 80-20 win for them because everybody knows that Trump is very popular with what he wants to do on immigration. That's, in fact, not true. Among the many things they say, that's not true. Anytime they say something like that, you have to assume it's not true, especially if it's Stephen Miller
pretty much
or Donald Trump or anybody else in that administration. And here is a graph from G. Elliott Morris, on Trump's immigration policies, and they're not all popular. Deport undocumented immigrants who have lived in the U.S. for more than 10 years, minus 37. Deport undocumented immigrants who are parents of U.S. citizens by birth, minus 36. They're all minus in terms of popularity. The only one that is really popular is the unfortunate deport undocumented immigrants who have been accused of committing violent crime. It doesn't say convicted, it says accused. Even there, though, if you did a follow-up question and said, what about if they haven't been convicted, or, you know, what if they have a green card, or, you know, so on and so forth, you get nuance. So people unfortunately think that, well, if you're committing a violent crime, you should be deported, fine. But if you're accused of committing a violent crime, that's the same thing as committing a violent crime. And that's what Trump is banking on.
Yeah.
And Chris Van Hollen is very clear. Look, it's got nothing to do with this particular individual. I don't care if he's a saint or a sinner. The point is everybody's entitled to due process. And if we don't do it that way, next it could be you. And that's what he said. He took a longer time to say it, but that's what he said. And that is a winning argument. And so when Peter Baker says, well, Trump critics think they have a point, but Trump supporters think that he's on the winning side of the issue. He's not on the winning side of the issue. You don't know that he's on the winning side of the issue. And no, you don't have to give it to him. You don't have to hand it to him. Well, you don't have to say, okay, he said he's winning, therefore he's... None of that's true. This is something where if you actually ask the American public, they don't like the idea of whisking somebody away without due process. And they especially don't like the fact that it's now being applied to American citizens.
Yes. That's
which the Trump administration will say is a mistake. That's not what we meant. And once we found out about it and or got a court order, we let them go.
Right. That has happened over and over again.
But that's not a popular position.
No.
What's popular is the idea that if you're a criminal, you come here, you commit crimes, you should be deported. Okay, fine. That's like saying my position on government is I want more services and less taxes. But let's get to the details.
Okay. Yeah.
How do you do that?
Right.
Which stuff should be cut? Well, not my stuff. Everybody else's stuff should be cut, not mine.
Yes, that's a common thing.
That's a very common thing. So Don't tell me that it's really popular when you really haven't demonstrated that.
Well,
and
yeah,
it's not true.
especially if the data says no, it isn't popular. Anything with a negative is kind of by definition not popular.
So you have people like Gavin Newsom who are saying things like, well, you really shouldn't be talking about this as a distraction from the economy. And Chris Van Hollen saying, Newsom, stick your nose somewhere else. You got it wrong.
I don't know what that is.
This is important. And, the fact that what Van Hollen is doing is for a constituent is great. But the fact that Van Hollen is doing something that's right, that's correct, that's the moral thing to do is on the death of Pope Francis. Remarkably important.
Yes.
There's not enough people in this world that do that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons he's on the shows, that, and he's got great talking points.
Yeah.
But, he did something that is worth commenting on the 5 shows. And the fact that the 5 shows are showing this is not something the Trump administration wanted. They want everybody to accept their argument that what Trump is doing is extremely popular and you shouldn't be contesting it. And so when Peter Baker and the AP and others, both sides it, this is the argument that Trump wants is usually the way they phrase it. Screw that. Let him have the frickin' argument because he's going to lose it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he wants to have it and every survey says that he's in the red on all of them.
They paint it as if he wants to have it, that must mean that he's winning. And that's not
so
true.
Smart.
It's just simply untrue.
Yeah, you're thinking of a different kind of politician, somebody who understands what's going on and is responsive to what's going on, and that's not what this is. So yeah, you should probably get used to that. Yeah, I don't know what Newsom was doing. I am not a Newsom fan by any stretch, but the only thing I could think of is it was just one of those programmed, verbal crutches to I don't know, whatever it is you're talking about. I want to talk about my thing. It's important. Whatever you're talking about is a distraction. So you just spit it out, and sometimes it's just it lands so absurdly because no, it's very clearly not a distraction. It's central to everything, but that's what you've rehearsed saying. I don't know. It reminds me of the many, many millions of years ago, and I did one like CNN.com appearance back when they did the Blogger Bunch thing. I don't even know if they still do that. And it was about torture in use in Iraq, Abu Ghraib, elsewhere. But this was basically as the Obama administration taking over and discovering more and more things that had been done by the Bush administration. And the stories come out, and you may recall in that particular instance, the Republican tactic there was to shift it to Nancy Pelosi. Well, she was briefed on this stuff as a member of the Gang of Eight. What did Nancy Pelosi know, and when did she know it? For torture that had been ordered by Bush and Cheney somehow. Right, this was her fault. Anyway, we were debating it, but the other Democrat, nominally, the other Democrat on the panel interrupted the discussion as I was, talking about the horrific nature of the torture going on, and saying this is a distraction. The American people don't care about this. Something about along those lines. And I mean, the reaction online from Democrats, from people at Daily Kos was like, "Who is this? What are we?" You put another Democrat on the panel, and they said torture is a distraction. Yeah. From what? And
These
I think
are core
it's just
issues.
I think this is just things that people are programmed to say, and that's what they rely on. When
torture and murder
on.
Are simply a distraction from the economy because
kitchen
people really care about
issues.
Kitchen table issues.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so if you don't,
crazy.
But this guy was tortured and murdered on my kitchen table.
And then after
Aren't
the
they allowed
fact,
to talk about it now?
No. Someone else's kitchen table. Yeah, and afterwards, I think she was quite horrified at seeing the tape and seeing what did I say? I don't know what was going. And I think that's the light goes on and the brain turns off, and you just rely on your training, and that's what's in there. I don't know. Gavin Newsom's, I guess, supposed to be better at it than most because he's governor of California.
He doesn't get the benefit of the doubt because he invites right-wing figures onto his podcast, and so no, I don't accept it from
that. Him. Yeah, I mean that's not pre-programmed. I don't know what that's about. So I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter because I'm not interested in defending Gavin.
Well,
Newsom.
Van Hollen went after him, and I thought that was the interesting point. And Van Hollen was right, and so it's okay to have these, inter-democratic party discussions
Sure.
about this, because among
That
other
does not
things, if
worry
you
me.
wind up writing about it, you at least bring the issue to the public.
Yeah.
So there's that. It doesn't show that Democrats in disarray. It doesn't sow division. It in fact keeps a very important topic in the news.
It's here
and
now. We're
top of
seeing
the
it.
headlines. And so I think it's great.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not too worried about it. But
No, so thank you, Gavin Newsom, for playing your role.
I guess so. Giving us something to talk about.
Yep, exactly right.
All right.
Anyway, other things.
Yes.
So this week in administration incompetence, Joseph
All
Allen
right.
summarizes this. The White House sends Harvard a letter making outrageous and illegal demands. White House now
Yes.
says it was sent by accident. Oops.
Right.
White House blames Harvard for reacting to the letter they sent.
Isn't that
Because it was
something?
obviously over the top. How dare you react to
What
this?
are
It
you
was
doing?
clearly a mistake.
Yeah.
Harvard. Well, the letter was signed by 3 federal officials,
Yeah.
placed on official letterhead, sent from the email inbox of a senior federal official, and was sent on April 11th as promised, Harvard said.
I don't know what you're
Recipients
supposed
of
to do
such
with that.
correspondence from the U.S. government, even when it contains sweeping demands that are astonishing in their overreach, do not question its authenticity or seriousness. The statement added, it remains unclear to us exactly what among the government's recent words and deeds were mistakes, or what the government actually meant to do. But even if the letter was a mistake, the actions the government took this week have real-life consequences and the standing of American higher education in the world. So, yeah. And in fact, as a follow-up to that, the Times had a piece, losing international students could devastate many colleges. Students could bypass the U.S. for friendlier countries. As the Trump administration attacks universities and revokes visas, their loss could hurt schools and the economy. And the United States makes a lot of money off of foreign students.
Yes.
Just as the United States makes a lot of money off of tourism.
Yes. And less coming than ever before. Yeah, people are very, very worried about entering the United States for any reason now. We spoke a little bit about during the break about the difficulties people are having at ports of entry, being searched, being questioned, having their phones seized. There was another story over the weekend that I noticed, 2 German tourists who had been stopped in Hawaii, entering from having arrived. I guess they're traveling all over the world. They came.
That's a bizarre story.
To Hawaii from New Zealand, and they hadn't booked their hotel rooms yet, so that raised suspicions somehow, because there are very few hotels in Hawaii, as you know. And they were.
Nobody ever goes there. It's too popular.
Right. They never made it out of the airport. The 18 and 19-year-old German tourist women that they were arrested, handcuffed, the whole thing, held overnight. They were
Spent
eventually
10
released.
hours there, and then they were deported.
Yeah, I mean, not
all
the
because
worst
they
horror
didn't make
story
a
in the world,
pre-booking.
Right. Quite bizarre. And we're doing this to everybody, and people who are supposed to be coming here for scientific conferences, for work, just for, they want to go to Disneyland with their kids.
I actually know people
and they hate
who
Euro
denied
Disney.
visas coming here for a international conference where they had been here for, 10 times for similar conferences.
Of course.
And their visa was denied for no reason.
Yeah. Well, right. They just, I think, it seems like they're sort of doing these things at random to scare people. Like they really just don't want, talk about your immigration hardliner. You don't even want people to come here on a tourist visa to visit New York or something? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or to give a
countries.
conference.
Yeah.
Because they happen to be an international expert on the topic.
Yeah. Exactly the sort of thing you normally. How are we gonna? This has really got me worried it's the least of the worries, I guess, if we even survive that long. But like World Cup, Olympics, this is all supposed to take place during this Trump administration. People come from all over the world for the Olympics. Yes.
Yeah. Well, nobody will come, so the Americans will win. That's my plan.
That could be it. IOC should be meeting to see if they can move the Olympics. It's crazy.
So I sent you this article from the New York Times. Losing international students could devastate many colleges.
Okay.
And as I was scrolling through it, I came to the big picture. They always have a picture at the top of the article to catch your eye.
Sure.
And I said, gee, that looks familiar. And then I realized why it looks familiar.
It's you.
It's MIT.
Yeah. It is
It's
sort of
the front opening building. And at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, says the blurb under the picture, more than 1 in 4 students hail from abroad.
Wow.
Now, if you stop sending international students, a place like MIT is going to take a hit. And this is a relatively conservative engineering school, usually supportive of government projects and programs, very friendly to the military.
All right. Oh, yeah, probably would.
And you're hurting them, and I don't know why.
I didn't ask anybody to hurt them. It's a terrible idea. Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah. But that I've been seeing that over and over again. The foreign students, I guess, typically are full tuition paying students. They're not scholarship students.
Right.
So it just
That's
from a financial standpoint alone, it's devastating. And if it's 1 in 4, well, that's really going to be a problem for MIT. But from an academic standpoint, it undermines the whole mission, which
the
of
whole
course
concept
just
of
thrills
best of the
Trump.
best from wherever.
Yeah. That is pretty remarkable. Oh, here's a good observation.
You want to support merit-based admissions? Here's a place that does exactly that.
True. Also, just from the wrong countries, apparently. Mighty OCD pointing out, what we're not saying is I don't see stories about Russian tourists being detained at the border.
You're saying I did not see Russian
from
tourists?
My house. Yes, I don't know, but right, I haven't seen
I did not
such a
see
story.
This coming.
No,
Russia's always exempt.
I guess so. They were left off of the tariff schedule. We noticed that. So no tariffs from Russia for some strange reason. And then nobody getting detained at the border. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's possible we may have missed the story or they didn't report on such a story. But well, keep your eyes out, everybody. If anybody sees one, let me know. I'd be interested to see. Yeah, they were detained at the border and then taken out to eat by the border patrol guys.
Right. So let's see what else we can talk about here. This is in the Bulwark. Adrian Carrasquil writing, Trump's zeal to ruin immigrant lives could backfire. After a similar situation in California in the 1990s, remember that? Pete somebody or other.
Yes.
Was it Prop 193? I forget.
Everything.
It's always whatever it is, it didn't work.
Yeah.
After a similar situation, Democrats took advantage, and they could again. There's some differences, obviously, between them and now.
Pete Wilson, that's it.
Pete Wilson. I knew it was one of them Pete's.
Yeah, with a really weird last name.
Was it Prop 189? I can't.
Good question. I don't know. We'll see whether how I'll even figure that out. But I'll look while you talk if you want.
Prop 187.
187. Okay.
Yeah. There were a lot of props that year. 187. We have 197 different choices you have to make. When you go in to do your ballot, it's going to take you a week and a half to fill out because...
Yeah, well, there was a time when
I spent 3 days on it. I'm only up to number 72.
Yeah.
In fact, we have an election tomorrow in my small hometown.
Yeah.
And there's like 9 different things on the ballot, which is huge for us.
And I have 9 propositions for you.
So we have to go check it out. Mostly about spending money. That's what small town ballots are generally about.
Right.
So the Bulwark, Adrian writes, there's a famous rule of thumb, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. Maybe in the case of the screw-ups here, it's a screw-up in a big complex bureaucracy, but that would stretch credulity, especially at a time when the Trump administration's new policies include DOGE, Homeland Security. Just last week, the New York Times reported the Trump administration intentionally, erroneously declared more than 6,300 lawful immigrants dead by putting them on a death master list, thereby canceling Social Security. The goal is to encourage these people to self-deport by enshrining a lie into law.
Yes, very dangerous.
And now, HUD officials are preparing a rule that would ban mixed status households from public housing, and DOGE is looking to remove current mixed status households, vowing to ensure that undocumented immigrants do not benefit from public programs. People, you have to step back and look at the big picture here. And the big picture is Doge has absolutely nothing to do with saving money and
Clearly
everything to do
not
with
at this
worming
point.
their way into these agencies
Yeah.
and siphoning up data. And what they
Yes.
do with the data, I don't know, but I certainly don't trust them to have it.
No. It's a dangerous idea, particularly the guy who's running it. It would be a bad idea for anybody, but this guy, well, Elon Musk has and the people he's hiring, really, many of them all have got really sordid backgrounds in terms of trustworthiness with data, working for, hacker groups, being associated with online, slightly black hat in their leanings, these hacker groups. Elon Musk stealing data from everywhere, shutting off Ukrainian access to Starlink on the battlefield in the middle of a battle, which brings us to another story one we haven't discussed. If you're looking for something else on Elon Musk, did you see this story about his proposed Trump's proposed Golden Dome program is essentially
what's this?
So this is sort of like SDI reborn, but borrowed from the Israeli Iron Dome defense system. Trump decides that it would be a nice pipe dream. Let's have the same thing. It's one thing to defend an area, a small portion of a small state like Israel from missile threat, drone threat, etc. But to do the entire continental United States the same way would be something of a challenge.
To protect it from what?
Let's
Texas?
say. Yeah, missile attack, which,
I said.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know where that's supposed to be coming from, but not ICBM attacks like Star Wars taking things out in outer space, but atmospheric threats as they call them. But anyway, that we should have one here, and of course because it's a Trump thing, it's going to be called Golden Dome. And lo and behold, who do you think might win the competitive bidding process?
The conflict of interest guy, Elon Musk.
Right. So SpaceX can
Who's
totally,
also going to share the data with
thing.
China so he could sell it to them.
Yes, and one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in my life is that they let this out, that Musk proposes, and I don't know what the excuse for it is, but Musk proposes, well, I can build it, but it's not something that I'm looking to build and sell to the government. You can license it from me on a subscription basis. Can you imagine? I mean, this is like right up there with
I
the coin-operated
China
rifles.
has launched missiles at you, or Iran has, but unfortunately your subscription has run out and our website is down, and so you can't subscribe until Monday.
If you're calling about customer service for your missile defense, there are no operators available. Please stay on the line. Your call is important to us.
Right.
What are you going
to just play
subscription basis? So, I mean, I've never heard anything
Look,
as
these
ridiculous
people are crazy
as that.
and they're stupid, but they're also very greedy and they're insanely, acquisitive. So yeah.
I don't know. I've never heard.
Anyway,
of
getting back to
that.
Adrian, what he writes is the long-term most important effect of the political and legal fight against Prop 187 is that today California is a sanctuary state that values its immigrant population and leads nationally in the fight against unfair attacks on immigrants and other minorities.
Good. We need them.
Of course,
California
in the long
more
run,
than
we're all
most.
dead, as John Maynard Keynes used to say.
Oh.
Republican strategist Mike Madrid had a front row seat to witness the damage Prop 187 inflicted on the Republicans. At the time, he was a college student appointee on a community college board of governors for Pete Wilson.
I see.
Then during the late 90s, as the legal challenges to Prop 187 reached its climax in the courts, Madrid was political director of the California GOP. He now sees Trump charging into a trap like the one that ensnared California Republicans 3 decades ago. Not a new playbook, played out in California for a generation, Madrid said. While 63% of whites voted for Prop 187 10 years later, the numbers dropped by about 20 points. The stuff is fine in the abstract. We're talking about the immigration stuff as well. but people started to recognize they were real lives. They're your neighbors, your kids are in the soccer field playing with their kids. Like every other cultural issue, when it becomes personalized, everything changes. So they're no longer talking about illegal aliens. They're talking about Kilmar Garcia, Abrego Garcia. So that's really the point, and that ties back to our original discussion about that. In abstract, people like what sounds good rather than what works. But then the more you learn about it, it turns out, oh, I wanted services cut. I just didn't want those services cut. Or again, in the abstract, I voted for Trump because of what he stood for, but this isn't what I voted for. Well, yeah, it is. But now that you learn about it, your vote might be different next time. Well, in some cases, yes. In some cases, no. But in some cases, yes. And so, the idea that this is a winner for Trump, 80-20, is just garbage. Absolutely, people like Van Hollen should be talking about it. And people should be talking about it like Van Hollen. One of the things I said over the weekend is that I'm sick and tired of reading stories from unnamed Democratic strategists that say talking about Abrego Garcia is a distraction from the economy, even though Gavin Newsom says it openly. I think every Democratic consultant who says you shouldn't be talking about Abrego Garcia should be fired and instead hire people to talk about how to talk about Abrego Garcia, the way Van Hollen does. So don't go down that route. That's ridiculous.
No, everyone wants to talk about it.
Talk about it. It's wrong.
Everyone does understand it. And again, I think we talked a little bit about it on Friday. If due process, I don't know, most people actually kind of, I think, grasp the idea. But in case you don't, or you think that's somehow a highfalutin topic, you can talk to people about things they know from cop shows, that everybody gets their day in court, that innocent until proven guilty, all of those things, that people understand that. And and across the board, they're kind of outraged by it. Even your polling shows that when people are told what happened, they say, we should not be doing that. All right. Well, how about we talk about this some more on Wednesday? Eastern Orthodox Monday, as I call it. We'll see you in a couple days.
Talk about it on Eastern Orthodox Wednesday.
All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. There's so much still that needs discussing. But let me, I want to turn back to an old topic that I keep trying to get back to, relating the Harvard story that Greg introduced. And I think at this point, maybe, all right, I don't know whether it's something we spend time reading through the Harvard story or not, but it really was rather remarkable the way that worked out. And we got the details, the important details out of it from Greg, that this demand letter from the administration, it was sent to Harvard, which led to them, I don't know what, adopting this heroic stance of standing up to the administration and rejecting the demands that, say, Colombia and others had already surrendered to, and that they were taking this bold stance, and thank God that they were, etc. But there was a little bit of backstory to it. Apparently, they were in negotiations with the administration and preparing to, in fact, make some surrender, some capitulation to the administration. Not everything that they ended up demanding, but a lot of things that would have probably made people say, oh my God, Harvard too has spineless the way, and I mean, it might be unfair to be saying, I don't know what pressures they were facing. It might be unfair, but it might be an accurate description to say that this is how, or that this describes how Colombia approached their negotiations. And they might not really have been negotiations. It was just a series of demands. Colombia was already on the ropes because of the protests, etc. And they figured they could do the same thing to Harvard. And Harvard almost allowed it, apparently. But then, as Greg mentioned, they were waiting for a letter outlining the demands of the administration that was supposed to have been sent to them on April 11th. And then on April 11th, a letter did show up, and it appeared to be on official letterhead, signed by 3 high-ranking administration officials, was backed by 3 different departments, I think was on the letterhead, and all the things that made it look like it was an authentic demand letter, and maybe it was, were present. And weirdly, the administration now says, oh, no. That was maybe some sort of draft statement, something that was being circulated that we hadn't approved at the highest levels and decided to send on. But in addition to that, it's your fault for responding to it. But, Harvard has a pretty good excuse here. I don't know. You sent it to us, signed, right at the time, and it wouldn't appear out of the blue. You told us a letter was going to be on our desk by April 11th, and then this showed up on April 11th. So what were we supposed to make of it? Anyway, they made these outrageous demands, apparently, and somewhere I have got, I might have a Blue Sky post of my own reaction to the story. It might be the fastest way to find this. I don't know whether I actually pocketed it, but because it happened over the weekend, it's buried. Anyway, you get the idea that they were making these outrageous demands, and we could probably pour over them, and maybe we will, but it also reminded me of the demand, reminds me of a lot of things, but the demand letter, in the sense that they said, we got this thing and it was so outrageous that we just couldn't accept it. Similarly, a few weeks back, there it is. A few weeks back, the Trump administration, in dealing with, or attempting to deal with Ukraine and its war with Russia, similarly issued them a demand letter. These are the things that you're going to have to do in order for the United States to continue to act on your behalf, which isn't happening from the Trump administration, in order to help devise a settlement with Russia, which is, generally speaking, you need to, surrender. But in addition, remember, this goes back to when they were thinking about trying to force a deal with Ukraine over mineral rights. I have to search this thing, but I put away at the time and never did go back and read a discussion of what was in that demand letter and how crazy the demands were, and that Ukraine received this demand letter in the same spirit, essentially, that Harvard apparently received these letters. Both thought that they were over a barrel and that they kind of had to give some serious consideration to whatever the Trump administration was going to be demanding of them. And they sat and they waited to see exactly what the terms were. And when they got them, they were so onerous, they said, there's really no other choice. We're going to have to be brave and defy these guys, whether we want to or not, because it's simply not doable any other way. So let's see. I think what I had put aside was a analysis of the news about that demand letter to Ukraine. So we'll read that one just because it chronologically happened first, and then we can go over to the Harvard story and see if the parallel holds up. This is actually over at Balloon Juice. That's John Cole's blog, but it is written by Adam Silverman, which, okay. I don't know. I'm not a daily follower or reader of what's on the blog site, but that's no slight on the blog. I enjoy it a great deal, and everything that they do there is terrific. I find myself visiting the blog pages, front pages, just to see what's there, less and less these days, and it's more and more directed by seeing people on social media discuss what they've been writing about, and then I'll go read that. And this was one of those. So this is back on March 27th, and their daily coverage of the Ukraine situation. War for Ukraine, day 1127. Golly. Trump's plan is not negotiation, not mediation, just theft through domination. Wow. That's one way of putting it. And Adam writes it up this way. The Trump team's newest proposal / plan for Ukraine has leaked. Again, this is back in late March. And from the Financial Times' coverage, here it's a large snippet of what's going on there. There's a lot of things that are emphasized by Adam here that are not emphasized with bold in the original, but at any rate, all of it seems pretty important. The U.S. is pushing for a sweeping new deal to control Ukraine's critical minerals and energy assets while offering Kyiv no security guarantees, none, in return, in an aggressive expansion of its previous demands. The new draft deal sent to Kyiv on Sunday and seen by the Financial Times goes well beyond an initial joint economic accord hammered out last month as part of U.S. President Donald Trump's efforts to end Russia's invasion of Ukraine, sort of, and recoup billions of dollars worth of military assistance. Remember that? And that was outrageous enough when we heard that that was the aim of this thing, that Trump was saying, well, you have to give us your, minerals, essentially, and your wealth, the wealth of your minerals, to pay us back for having helped you all this time. Like, that's just never been an issue in American foreign policy before that way. Anyway, senior Ukrainian officials said the proposal could undermine their nation's sovereignty, root profits abroad, and deepen its dependence on Washington. The draft deal marks a dramatic escalation of the Trump administration's efforts to seize control of Ukraine's lucrative natural resources as it presses to bring the conflict to an end. It would apply to all mineral resources, including oil and gas, and major energy assets across the entire Ukrainian territory. Washington is demanding that Ukraine and the U.S. set up a supervisory board to oversee a joint investment fund to split the income from Ukraine's oil, gas, and mineral projects between the two countries. Well, why? They belong to the Ukraine. Not the Ukraine, I know, right? It belong to Ukraine. And, you should split it with us. Why exactly? Well, we paid for your defense. No, not even really true. But that's what the demand was. The U.S., now, again, so a supervisory board would oversee a joint investment fund that splits the money. The U.S. would appoint 3 of the 5 board members, giving Washington full veto power over the fund. Can you imagine this? I mean, do you think that went over well in Ukraine? I think it would be overly aggressive to say, oh, okay, 3 Ukrainians, 2 Americans. 2 Americans? Why? How about 0 Americans? I'm sure the Ukrainians would say. But a 3-2 majority? The draft also says that the contributions of the United States following the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 would be, quote, deemed as contributions to the partnership. So, in other words, stealing their mineral wealth from them, and, we'll split it 50-50, and then we'll put it under a 5-member board, 3 from the United States, 2 from Ukraine. First order of business is a 100-0 split in favor of the United States. All those in favor say aye. The ayes have it. See you later. Right? No, we'll be fair, I'm sure. Anyway, that's okay because we invested in you by giving you money and weapons to defend yourself against the Russians, and the dividend is all your mineral wealth. Instead of the Russians conquering you and stealing all your mineral wealth, the Americans will kind of sort of not conquer you, but still take all your mineral wealth. You can see why they didn't respond to this. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Fox News on Wednesday he believed the deal could be signed as soon as next week. By the way, how'd that go? It didn't at all. But 3 senior Ukrainian officials told the Financial Times that it was unlikely to happen, to say the least. One said the new U.S. draft proposal was unfair, while another likened it to robbery, which is also unfair. A third official said the team of legal advisors had been brought in to help the government examine the document as it prepared a counteroffer. Ukrainians have expressed frustration at the increasing pressure from Trump to compromise to secure a ceasefire and lasting peace. Good luck. Even as the Kremlin shows no sign of stopping its invasion. In Paris on Thursday, and remember, this is all in late March, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the U.S. was, quote, constantly, unquote, changing the terms of the agreement, not unlike the law firm letters, many of which also are unconscionable on their face, but also get the terms changed after there's an alleged agreement. So he's doing it with the law firms, he's doing it with Harvard and the universities, he's doing it with Ukraine, everywhere. But he added that he did not want Washington to think Kyiv was against the deal. Okay. Under the new proposal, projects covered by the fund would include those carried out by the Ukrainian government itself, as well as companies approved by Kyiv or state-owned organizations. The deal also covers infrastructure connected to the exploitation of natural resources such as roads, railways, pipelines, ports, and processing plants. I guess we all get a piece of that too. Funds generated under the latest proposal would be converted directly into foreign currency and routed abroad, and Ukraine would be liable for compensation in the event of delays or disputes. The U.S. would receive royalties from the fund before Ukraine at a 4% premium and would retain priority rights on infrastructure projects as well as veto power over third-party sales of resources. I mean, it's just colonizing Ukraine, period. Well, anyway, we are told there's much more at the link. I don't know whether we can read the link. It's Financial Times. I think it's firewalled. There's no way President Zelensky can agree to this. Nor the, what is this? Verkhovna Rada, which, okay, what, I don't even know what we're talking about. The Ukrainian followers, Ukraine followers are probably amazed that I don't know. Is that the parliament? Yes, the unicameral parliament of Ukraine. All right, so no way Zelensky or the parliament could ever agree to such a thing. And at this point, Adam goes on to say, I want to emphasize an additional point. The funds the U.S. provided to Ukraine were not predicated on some sort of post-war deal requiring the Ukrainians to provide recompense. Even those portions designed as developmental loans were, like they almost always are, to be forgiven when they came due. What this is, plain and simple, is a shakedown. Well, that's going to happen when you're dealing with Trump. From the nation that brought us the Marshall Plan, we now have this proposal for the Trump Plan for Ukraine, where the Marshall Plan embraced enlightened self-interest by America. The Trump Plan is predatory and basically an extortion bid against the people of Ukraine. That is interesting. That's from the Blue Sky posts of Mick Ryan. Mick Ryan, let's see, strategist, leader, and author. How do you like that? A retired Army Major General and a senior fellow in military studies at the Lowy Institute. Okay, not somebody I have followed, but, well put there, comparing it to the Marshall Plan. And it goes on for some time, where the Marshall Plan was extended in scope to push back on communism and Soviet influence in Europe. The Trump Plan basically employs Russian and Chinese economic coercion measures and will negatively impact U.S. reputation in Europe. Many poor comparisons. The Trump Plan looking mighty stupid in the face of the Marshall Plan. But I don't know that anybody was going to do anything to stand up to the Marshall Plan in this situation. Anyway, lots of embedded Twitter commentary on it. But just to give you a flavor for how impossible the terms were, I wanted to read that to you. And then from there, we can go back to the current news and the story of the letter to Harvard. That was covered by the New York Times on, what was this, Thursday, perhaps? It was Thursday the 18th? I can't remember how the dates run. Anyway, if today's the 21st, yesterday, so it was Friday, I guess. Trump officials blame mistake for setting off confrontation with Harvard. An official on the administration's anti-Semitism task force, which again, what are you even doing here? Why is there one? Anyway, an anti-Semitism task force told the university that a letter of demands had been sent without authorization, and just so many things happening without authorization. And here, the context I'm thinking of here, another story we haven't gotten to yet, but because you have heard this story now, and you have the context in which I want to discuss it already on the table, with the letter having been sent by mistake. We'll get to the details of how it ended up getting sent by mistake when we read the article, but put this up against the issue from the first signal chat about Yemen, in which they're discussing authorizing and executing this attack. in Yemen, and no less than the vice president, JD Vance, no less a personage. Although he's not really much of a personage. Anyway, but JD Vance at that point, I guess in one of the more embarrassing points of this, but that got overlooked by the incredible nature of the security breach, was JD Vance saying, hey, I don't know if this is such a good idea, which in itself, that's maybe one of the better thoughts I've ever seen JD Vance have. This might not be a great idea to launch this attack for various reasons. And then kind of questioning, are you sure we have the go-ahead to do this? And also sort of lost in the discussion of the outrageousness of the security breach, Stephen Miller saying, basically, I think I'm pretty sure the president said it was fine. Like not really any great evidence for a presidential authorization for a military launch, launching a military attack, that is. And so he's like reading the entrails here, I think the president mumbled something about it was okay, so let's go do it, is what it essentially came down to. And in hindsight now, I guess nobody was complaining about it because there were no American losses in this attack, and that's what it takes to trigger complaint about that here in the United States. But I mean, we may have just launched a major military attack without the president's knowledge or assent. It's just, I'm letting you do it. I'm going to go play golf. If we need to attack anybody, Stephen, take care of it. That's not really feasible. We can't have that. It's not legal. It's not constitutional. No. Between that, and there was some discussion also over the weekend that there's infighting going on about the tariff levels, and that basically the same story we've always heard about Trump listening to, or only absorbing the last lesson, the last person he speaks to sets policy, before he gets to the stage, and that there was a long narrative of Peter Navarro having sat down with him in the Oval Office and led the tariff discussion and convinced Trump that the way to go was the gigantic tariffs that he was going to levy on everybody. And here's that chart, and can't wait. And trade wars are good and easy to win. Let's hike up the tariffs everywhere. Let's go, 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 go. And then Scott Bessent and others waited for Navarro to leave to go to a different meeting, and then they sort of snuck in. They secreted themselves somehow into the Oval Office to talk to Trump about the tariffs again, and said, no, you really can't do this. Let's ratchet it back. Let's do the 90-day pause. Let's bring tariffs on some of these countries back down to 10%, which is still actually a huge increase from where they actually were at the time. So the pause idea is a false one. But anyway, they lowered the tariffs from the level at which Navarro had proposed them. And then as soon as they got a nod of agreement, because they were the last ones to see the president, they ran to the briefing room. Caroline Leavitt announced the new changes. Bessent was talking to the press. They just waylaid the president and undid Navarro's work, which is fine by me. I don't mind that they undo Navarro's anything, but also indicative of just nobody in charge at the White House, which is dangerous. And on top of all of that, there was also another story which we haven't yet discussed, and I guess I got something parked in pocket somewhere. The IRS commissioner changes. We're now on Trump's second administration's fourth IRS commissioner, and we're in, like, how long are we into this thing? Like 3 months. And a fourth IRS commissioner. Someone was the, or at least the acting IRS commissioner for like 2 days. Like the new Scaramucci is now down to 2 days or something like that. And the reason this person is in and then out again so quickly is apparently they were ousted when Scott Bessent went to Bessent doing some interesting work these days. Not a good person, not a competent person, but doing better work than the rest of the cabinet, apparently. Went to the president to complain, hey, I'm the Treasury Secretary, and I didn't say that this guy should be the IRS commissioner. Did you say this guy should be the IRS commissioner? I don't know. I didn't say anything, And he may have. He just doesn't know. But anyway, the story appeared to be reporting that Elon made the decision. This guy should now be the acting IRS commissioner because I run everything. And if my guys program the computers to say that he's the IRS commissioner, then he is. And they didn't check with anybody. And Bessent, I guess, managed to find Trump in a lucid moment and say, you know how this is supposed to work. You're supposed to know at the minimum who we're supporting for this nomination. This is up to you. And the other guy is making the decisions for you while you're asleep or golfing or signing something else. And again, like, holy cow, no one is home with this guy. He's dangerously checked out, which is great in that, I mean, he's very incompetent and stupid. But it can't, be producing any confidence in the markets, in international affairs, in the military, to know that it's a total vacancy in the, nobody at home in the penthouse suite at Trump Tower, if you know what I mean, is dangerous and weird. I don't know. I don't know how else to put it. So anyway, to complete the comparison here, let's read a little bit from the Harvard story, just so we get the details here. This is the New York Times reporting on it. Trump officials blame mistake for setting off confrontation with Harvard. Subheader is, an official on the administration's anti-Semitism task force told the university that a letter of demands had been sent without authorization. Michael Schmidt and Michael Bender, the Michael team here, reporting this one. Harvard University, maybe you've heard of them, received an emailed letter from the Trump administration last Friday that included a series of demands about hiring, admissions, and curriculum. So onerous, how onerous? So onerous that school officials decided they had no choice but to take on the White House. The university announced its intentions on Monday, setting off a tectonic battle between one of the country's most prestigious universities and a U.S. president. Then, almost immediately, came a frantic call from a Trump official. The April 11th letter from the White House's Task Force on Anti-Semitism. And again, the idea that we're going to reconfigure Harvard's curriculum and admissions policy, like everything that makes the university what it is, from the anti-Semitism task force. Like, talk about getting a foot in the door and just running the place. We want you to stop, essentially, what they really wanted was, we want you to stop students from demonstrating in support of Palestine on your campuses. Why? That's a huge violation of their First Amendment rights. Well, reason they came up with, they are harassing Jewish students such that they no longer feel like they can continue their educations at Harvard. And of course, I don't think it really ever rose to that level. Certainly not among the students who were protesting in favor of Palestine, the recognition of Palestinian rights, etc. However you want to express it. Very often people not affiliated with the student movements may or may not have been harassing individual Jewish students. I'm sure that there were some who felt uncomfortable, some who probably even genuinely felt threatened. That doesn't bring us to the point where the United States government can, one, be telling, colleges how to handle these things. They can consult with the FBI if they want help in combating actual attacks or the threat of attacks, but then shoehorning everything else in. We also want to reserve spots in your next class for MAGA influencers and luminaries. No, I'm sorry. That's, that you don't get in through the anti-Semitism door on that, or any door, actually. So again, the letter was sent by the acting General Counsel of the Department of Health and Human Services. Remember, a letter to Harvard about ostensibly anti-Semitism and what we want you to do about it, which relates to curriculum and admissions and hiring, etc., from the General Counsel of HHS. Why? Because he's on the task force. Who is it? Sean Kevaney, is that right? Keveney. I don't know how he pronounces that. Sounds Jewish, Sean. According to three other people who were briefed on the matter, Mr. Kevaney is a member of the anti-Semitism task force, which, it explains why he's writing and signing the letter. It doesn't explain anything about why he's on the task force. but it probably is because he was willing to do Trump's bidding, much less than that he has any particular interest in anti-Semitism, either as a hobby or, for all I know, or preventing it. It is unclear what prompted the letter to be sent last Friday. Its content was authentic, the three people said, but there were differing accounts inside the administration of how it had been mishandled. Some people at the White House believed that it had been sent prematurely, according to the three people who requested anonymity, of course. Others in the administration thought it had been meant to be circulated among task force members rather than sent to Harvard. So pretty dumb all around. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I have to interrupt. We interrupt this program to bring in the latest breaking news. I don't know, something I just saw fly by on social media that I just thought was rather interesting. Just, I don't know, I guess add to the stories of incompetence of the administration. It's not the administration per se, but Kristi Noem, who, as you may know, is the Secretary of Homeland Security, and therefore, one, security, and two, probably in possession of some sensitive, not that she's carrying classified materials around with her wherever she goes, but, I'll tell you what happened. Kristi Noem has had her purse, her bag, stolen while she was dining at a D.C. restaurant. And, of course, she has a security detail with her, and you constantly are seeing her cosplaying as an Homeland Security agent and dressing up in body armor and tactical gear and, looking for all the world like she's cosplaying as a cop. Anyway, she had her purse stolen right from, I guess, I don't know, from where exactly. We'll read the details. CNN has a story. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's bag, including $3,000 in cash, by the way, which, what? That should trigger an investigation all by itself, is stolen from a D.C. restaurant. Josh Campbell and Kit Mayer report. And anyway, right out from under her nose and the nose of the Secret Service. They kept this a secret somehow from themselves. Yeah, she has a Secret Service detail. And they reviewed some security camera footage and saw an unknown white male wearing a medical mask, so they'll be coming out against masking again, steal her bag and leave the restaurant. The thief got away with Noem's driver's license, medication, apartment keys, passport, DHS access badge, which I'm sure they can deactivate, whatever, makeup bag. I don't even know how he had the strength to carry that away without a wheelbarrow. Blank checks, a checkbook, and about $3,000 in cash, the law enforcement source said. I wonder what is she even doing carrying that much cash? Like, famously, a lot of times these people, when they get out of office and go back to normal life, they're like, I'm not used to driving myself or carrying cash for buying things. She has $3,000 in the purse, along with everything else. I don't know. Secret Service has launched an investigation to trace any use of Noem's financial instruments, the person said. That's going to be a dangerous thing to do. look, if it's a straight up robbery, they'll keep the cash and chuck everything else anyway. But I mean, a DHS access badge, passport. What are you doing? I don't know. I really have no idea. And where was the Secret Service? And was the bag, I'm just curious now, was the bag like hanging on the back of her chair? Was it in the coat room? They have security footage, so I wonder whether they'll release it. I'd love to know whether this person just lifted off the back of her chair. Anyway, that seems pretty crazy, but it's not what I came here to tell you about. Back to the story about Harvard and this crazy letter. The timing of the whole thing was so consequential. We'll begin again here. The letter arrived when Harvard officials believed, this is important to note, believed they still could avert a confrontation with President Trump. Over the previous 2 weeks, Harvard and the task force had engaged in a dialogue, but the letter's demands were so extreme that Harvard concluded that a deal would ultimately be impossible. And this really does smack of the Trump negotiating style, which works when it's, we're talking about contractors and subcontractors, perhaps on a construction site. But when you're talking about Harvard University and a deal with the United States government, this kind of threat just makes for outrage and people walking. And especially the idea that you can redo it. Like, it's not just a private negotiation. Oh, it was a mistake. It's going to leak. And you're going to be stuck standing by it. After Harvard publicly repudiated the demands, this is interesting, the Trump administration raised the pressure, freezing billions in federal funding to the school and warning that its tax-exempt status was in jeopardy. No way to walk things back, is it? A senior White House official said the administration stood by the letter, calling the university's decision to publicly rebuff the administration overblown and blaming Harvard for not continuing discussions. Again, their view of it is, let's make these horrific, onerous demands. And if they say, hey, these are horrific and onerous, well, it's just a starting position for negotiations. Well, don't commit it to paper then. It was malpractice, they say, on the side of Harvard's lawyers, not to pick up the phone and call the members of the anti-Semitism task force who they've been talking to for weeks, said May Mailman, the White House senior policy strategist. Instead, Harvard went on a victimhood campaign. Like, holy cow, that is some spin. Why didn't they pick up the phone and call the members of the anti-Semitism task force? Because they had just signed this letter to them. What were they supposed to think about this? Still, Ms. Mailman said there is potential pathway to resume discussions if the university, among other measures, follows through on what Mr. Trump wants and apologizes to its students for fostering a campus where there was anti-Semitism. Yeah, unlike the White House where there's supposed to be. Mr. Kavani could not be reached for comment. In a statement, a spokesman for the anti-Semitism task force said, the task force and the entire Trump administration is in lockstep on ensuring that entities who receive taxpayer dollars are following all civil rights laws. That's another amazing spin. Harvard pushed back on the White House's claims that it should have checked with the administration lawyers after receiving the letter. The letter was signed by 3 federal officials, placed on official letterhead, sent from the email inbox of a senior federal official, and sent on April 11th as promised. Harvard said in its statement on Friday, recipients of such correspondence from the U.S. government, even when it contains sweeping demands that are astonishing in their overreach, do not question its authenticity or seriousness. Although I do frequently warn people that Trump and paperwork don't mix, and pretty much any communication from this administration should be questioned in terms of its authenticity or seriousness. This is one of the very few places in which it was to your advantage not to question it, but you should almost always question it. The statement added, it remains unclear to us exactly what, among the government's recent words and deeds, were mistakes, or what the government actually meant to do and say, which is an amazing thing. But even if the letter was a mistake, the actions the government took this week have real-life consequences on students and employees and the standing of American higher education in the world. The letter shocked Harvard not only because of the nature of the demands, but because it was sent when the university's leadership and the lawyers it hired to deal with the administration thought they could head off a full-bore conflict with Mr. Trump for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Harvard's lawyers, William Burke and Robert Hur. I feel like we've run into Robert Hur before. listened as Trump officials in fairly broad strokes laid out the administration's concerns about how the school dealt with anti-Semitism and other issues. I want to Google Robert Hur, but I'm not certain if it'll bring our was Robert Hur the guy who conducted the DOJ's special counsel investigation into Biden's handling of confidential vice presidential papers? I think so. Maybe that's why his name is familiar. He's only in the news. Yeah, here's an appointment of a special counsel. Yeah, I think so. All right, here we go. Right. Unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents or other records discovered at the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy. Right. Okay. So that's where Robert Hur's name came. No wonder it was familiar to me. That's interesting that he's now representing Harvard in all of this. And doing so stridently at that. I wonder if that was... That seems dicey. Anyway, I don't know anything about William Burke, but we could look him up. Anyway, they listened to, as Trump officials in fairly broad strokes laid out the administration's concerns about how the school dealt with anti-Semitism and other issues, like not letting me into this school when I asked. On the administration side of this dialogue were three lawyers: Josh Grunbaum, a top official at the General Services Administration. Why? I don't know. Thomas Wheeler, the acting general counsel. I'm sorry, the what general counsel? Acting! Yes, general counsel for the Department of Education. That makes some sense. And Mr. Kavani from Health and Human Services. Less sense. GSA, none at all. The back and forth lacked specifics on what the administration wanted Harvard to do. They probably didn't know. The Trump administration lawyers said they would send Harvard a letter last Friday that laid out more specifics. Then the letter showed up. What were we supposed to do about this? By the end of the workday on Friday, the letter had not arrived. Instead, overnight, the lawyers from Harvard received a letter sent from Mr. Kavani an email that was far different from the one the school had expected. It listed a series of demands that would reshape student and academic life in ways Harvard could never agree to. On Monday, Harvard said publicly that it could not accede to them. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Grunbaum called one of Harvard's lawyers, according to two people with knowledge of the calls, and at first he said he and Mr. Wheeler had not authorized the sending of the letter, though their signatures were on it. Mr. Grunbaum then slightly changed his story, saying the letter was supposed to be sent at some point, just not on Friday, when the dialogue between the two sides was still constructive, one of the people said. A lawyer for Columbia University received a similar call from Mr. Grunbaum around the same time. Two people with knowledge of the call said he, Mr. Wheeler, and Mr. Kavani had also been engaged with Columbia about changes the task force wanted that university to adopt, and Mr. Grunbaum wanted the Columbia lawyer to know that the letter to Harvard was, quote, unauthorized, the two people with knowledge of the call said. Mr. Grunbaum made no response to a message seeking comment. Later Monday, Harvard's corporation and senior leaders were briefed on Mr. Grunbaum's assertion that the letter should not have been sent. The briefing left many on Harvard's side convinced that the letter had been a mistake. Three people familiar with the matter said, I guess you can convince people from Harvard of anything. The Harvard officials, including several who worked in government earlier in their careers, were shocked that such an important letter bearing the logos of three government agencies with signatures of three top officials at the bottom could be sent by mistake. But at that point, there was no way for Harvard to undo what had already been set in motion. The university had already declared that it would rebuff the letter's demands, and despite claiming that the letter should not have been sent, the Trump administration did not withdraw it. So, there's no other conclusion to reach. In response to Harvard's decision to fight, the White House announced that Trump was freezing $2.2 billion in grants to the school. Within a day, he was threatening to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status, all of which speaks to the idea of its having been a mistake as being complete BS. So, you could take it with a grain of salt, I guess, but I won't take it at all. It's garbage. It was not a mistake. They stand by it. They had the opportunity to withdraw it. They didn't do it, and they upped the stakes. The end. That's all there is to it. All right. Another story which popped up just this morning, and just to keep things current, I thought I would read it to you. It's from the HuffPost. It's about Nancy Mace, and she's crazy, so that fits in with the theme here. By the way, it seems like this is a bad photo of her. Her mouth is taking up increasing percentage of her face, which is rather amazing. The rest of her face is shrinking. The mouth is growing. And, well, it's not just metaphorically speaking. I mean, it really looks like it physically. So how did she spend her weekend? And the answer is being crazy. And this one I'd like you to file alongside the other stories we shared. I don't know, was it last week? I think. Alongside the stories I've been hearing from others, including my own family members, of more frequently running into Trump supporters who appear to be triggered by almost nothing, just the most trivial statements in discussion, sometimes that are in fact political discussions or have a political context, but in which the Trump supporters make very bold, sometimes maybe even supportable assumptions, but then just completely escalate the intensity level of discussion 10 times over. They turn it up to 11 where other people are just warming up. You know what I mean? Here it happens with Nancy Mace, who's, supposed to be professional to some extent. Jasmine Tolliver wrote this for HuffPost. Nancy Mace films herself. Well, that's not unusual, but films herself having wild meltdown on, quote, unhinged lunatic, quote, unquote, voter over hosting town halls. I know it's a little disjointed, but okay. The shocking and filthy, it says, exchange took a turn after the politician alluded that he, the voter she was speaking to, was gay. All right, what's going on here? Representative Nancy Mace is the one sharing the footage, by the way, of an expletive-laden confrontation between her and an unhinged lunatic voter over the weekend. That's the way she's spinning it, and she's spinning it as I'm a tough person. That's why I am screaming profanities at this person who asked me the question. And again, I understand that she was probably correct that the person asking this question wasn't a supporter of hers, but you'll see how this goes. Some unhinged lunatic wearing Daisy Dukes, this person says, or this person being Nancy Mace, at a makeup store, got in my face today. Dems are nuts. So I went off, and I won't be backing down, Mace wrote in a post on X on Saturday alongside a clip of the incident. She added in her caption, I hold the line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Try me. Try her during the extra quarter day at some point, or maybe on a leap year. Anyway, in the clip, things spiral out of control after the man questions if she would be holding more town hall meetings this year while she was out shopping over the weekend. Right? You going to hold any more town hall meetings? Now, it's a loaded question because, of course, probably not. If she is, then he probably plans to go there and confront her or ask pointed questions, or somebody else might want to do that. But it's a legitimate question. And you can just say, if the answer is no, just say no. But they're afraid to say that, so they want the answer to be yes. So just say yes. When? I don't know. My staff is working on it. Well, I want to know when. You tell me when. How come we can't talk to you? Well, when we have it, we'll have it. You can push them off that way. But instead, she wants to do the confrontation, right? So, are you going to have any more town hall meetings this year? I do them every year. Do you want to keep going? Oh, my goodness. Do you want to keep going? Keep harassing me? The conservative lawmaker said, telling the unidentified man in the video that he could have gone to a dozen town halls last year. That's not the question. The man responded, I asked you if you were doing any more this year. It was one simple question. Prompting Mace, no, you're not going to get the last word on me, prompting Mace to then imply that he was gay, despite him never mentioning his sexuality during their heated exchange. I don't know whether he gave any signs that was the case or not. It's inappropriate for her to bring it up, but whatever. But, I mean, we're already off the rails here. And by the way, so this is really interesting. Are you going to have any more town halls this year? I do them every year. Do you want to keep going? You want to keep going? You want to harass me some more? You could have gone to a dozen town halls last year. I'm just asking if you're going to do another one this year. Oh, yeah, well, you're gay. And by the way, I voted for gay marriage twice, she said, to which he replied, what does that have to do with me? Or better, and what does that have to do with anything? The question I asked you. Are you going to have a town hall? I voted for gay marriage. Okay, so you're saying you think I'm gay, and maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, but are you going to have any town halls? Mace's derogatory words came after she previously claimed to be pro-LGBTQ, telling the Washington Examiner in March 2021 that she strongly supports LGBTQ rights and equality. The dispute between Mace and the man further ignited after the politician accused him of being, quote, absolutely, we'll settle it down a little bit. Here's the supposedly filthy part. Absolutely effing, wink, wink, crazy. But wait, there's more. You people on the left are crazy. You're absolutely effing crazy. You are, and get out of my face. Goodbye. F you, she fired back after he began to walk away. Are you having any more town hall meetings this year? I'm sure it was even loaded. You going to have any more town hall meetings this year, Nancy? I had a dozen. I do them every year. You want to keep going? You want to keep harassing me? Go to a town hall in the past somehow. Get in a time machine. F you. You're gay. I support gay marriage, though. And also F you. You all Dems are crazy. As he's walking away. Her biting words, and I wouldn't even credit her with that, drew him right back into the clash, with him swiveling back to tell Mace she's a disgrace to this state, a nasty bitch, and is going to be voted out so fast this year. Golly, I hope so, but I have my questions. The clip of them going at each other's throats ended with Mace replying, get the F out of my face now. F you. You couldn't take me on, baby. So tough. In a separate video shared on Blue Sky by a social media user, the man seemingly kicked off the conversation by asking Mace if she's going to host a real town hall meeting for the people this year. Ooh. Did you miss the 15 I had last year? Who cares? She asked as she shot back, the town hall you hosted this year was not a town hall. Let's be real. He shoots back. In a follow-up post, Mace poked fun at the spicy war of words, writing, I just wanted some face wash on my afternoon off, LOL. Representatives for Mace didn't immediately respond to HuffPost for comment. Last month, Mace was criticized for not attending a town hall organized by the Low Country Accountability Alliance, alleging that it was being driven by left-wing extremists and paid agitators with a clear agenda and wasn't safe. We're staying away because it's not safe, and we refuse to be bullied by individuals who are there threatening me, my employees, and my family, she wrote on X, but she's always saying that she's being threatened, including vandalizing her own house. So, anyway, more crazy from Nancy Mace, and that's important because some prominent listeners to this program live in Nancy Mace's district, or did. I don't know. Hopefully they got redistricted out of there, but I don't think so. I think they just made her district more conservative and remained stuck in it. Anyway, let's see. Yes, other news. We mentioned earlier in the show while Greg was on that increasing reporting of ICE snatching up American citizens off the street. And I mean, I guess it doesn't end with the people in El Salvador or Guantanamo for that matter. But still, it took 10 days. This is the weird part about this stuff, is these things are taking 10 days to straighten out. Long story short here, the story is from Arizona. The report, the website I'm taking it off with, AZArizonapm.org, and it's PBS NPR related website. U.S. citizen in Arizona detained by immigration officials for 10 days. A 19-year-old man from Albuquerque picked up on April 8th, not released until April 17th. Long story short here, the guy is visiting Tucson and is, walking around near an ICE office, apparently, and is scooped up off the street, which is just sort of a funny thing in general. Like, do these, I don't know, it made me think like they were like, do you guys want to go down to the border? Oh, man. Long trip here, but we need to. We've been hearing rumors lately of ICE officers having quotas that they need to fulfill of people that they are stopping and detaining on immigration charges. So they're like, it's time to go to lunch, right? So we'll just go outside and arrest somebody brown on the way to lunch so that you can meet your quota. And it happens to be this 19-year-old guy from Albuquerque visiting Tucson and just walking around, and they pick him up. And of course, well, the problem is he hasn't got his ID on him, which is, not supposed to be an issue for American citizens here in this country. But usually, you got some ID on you, generally speaking. But look, these days, you can pay for anything you want on your phone, right? You're not driving anywhere. You just take your phone, leave the wallet at home, and use Apple Pay if you've got it. You can do that. Certainly not illegal. Anyway, even so, you scoop the guy up. He tells you he's an American citizen, and it takes 10 days to straighten this out. He's from Albuquerque. It's not that far away. But it takes 10 days to get before a judge. And of course, it works the way it's supposed to work, except it's supposed to maybe move faster than that. Why isn't Dodgy making that more efficient? 10 days to get the opportunity to say, no, seriously, I'm an American citizen. Here's my driver's license and birth certificate. Oh, yeah. And the judge does what they're supposed to do. Dismissed. But 10 days is what it takes to get something like that done, which is really rather surprising, to say the least. And of course, the cops just, why don't the cops want to figure this out? Where's your ID? I don't have it on me. All right. Well, fine. I think you're an illegal immigrant. Well, I'm not. All right. Well, why not 1 hour? Take them to a detention center somewhere. Say, here's a phone. You get one phone call. Call somebody who can establish that you're a U.S. citizen. Call mom. Mom helps, whatever it is. In fact, I think it was his girlfriend's aunt helps out. And then maybe that's what took so long, to figure out who could help them. But anyway, increasing number of such stories, and it's really rather disturbing, to say the least. But at least it's worked out in terms of he wasn't shipped out of the country. Which brings us back to the other thing that we didn't spend time on that was wild from over the weekend. The Supreme Court issuing, at 1 a.m. on Saturday, issuing a ruling on an emergency basis. And I've got lots of writing and analysis to share with you, and maybe that's something we can discuss. Tuesday, we got the decks clear. I guess we can spend some more time on stuff like that. But Steve Vladeck will take you through the decision and how extraordinary it was. I mean, the thing to get on the record at this point was that it was a 7-2 decision, Alito and Thomas being the dissenters, but that it was taken by most observers, Chris Geidner, Steve Vladeck, myself. I didn't publish anything about it, but when I saw what had happened, one, that they were issuing decisions at 1 a.m, and two, that they had reached their conclusion. It was 7-2, and there was no dissent included, but there was a note that said the dissent is coming later. It was a very obvious signal from the Supreme Court that they're catching on. This was related to these exfiltrations and shipping people out of the country and getting them down to the prison in El Salvador, from which they all claim there's no such thing as release somehow. And it was, I think, a signal from the court that we understand that it is the case. 7 of us believe that it's the case. Maybe even all 9 of us believe that it's the case, that this administration is playing games with the semantics of our orders, and we really need to put a stop to it, and that they are doing things like, if we don't issue this order at 1 a.m, then at 2 a.m, they're going to put people on these planes and ship them out of the country. If we wait till 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, to issue our order, they're going to rush and exfiltrate people overnight. So we put it out at 1 a.m, and it can't even be, well, don't put it out until 4 in the morning because Alito is finishing his dissent. No, it doesn't matter. The dissent is the dissent. It can come later. It's a 7-2 decision the other way anyway, so this is at best a footnote. Put out the order and block these flights. And the order is also discusses essentially their belief that that the administration is doing things like, I don't know, I really have to kind of summarize on our way out the door here. We'll discuss it in more detail, like actual real detail tomorrow. I hope everything stays settled long enough that we can actually do this. But they're basically saying we understand and fully believe that this administration is doing stuff like, if we give you an order that says you can't, this plaintiff is being held in XYZ detention center, along with 10, 100, 1,000 others. You're not allowed to exfiltrate this guy to El Salvador or anywhere else. He cannot leave the country, and neither can anyone else from this detention facility. And the administration's interpretation of that is fine. Put them on a bus and move them to another detention facility and then exfiltrate them from there. And the court is basically saying, we see you. We understand what you're doing. It is not acceptable. You must stop. We are right now at that point where you are either in compliance or defiance of the Supreme Court. Period. End of sentence. But anyway, Alito doesn't think so, but it was, I think, a very clear signal that the Supreme Court understands exactly what the administration is doing. How quickly, how severely they will back this up, if they will, still an open question. But it was really rather a remarkable thing, and then when we get to the details of the case, you'll see more of what's going on. But we can't do that until tomorrow.
NetworksRadio.com.
At the earliest.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
But Justice Putnam's going to take it from here with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Top on his list, the protracted North Carolina Supreme Court race takes a turn at last in the Democrats' favor. On the rest of his menu today, Trump's $239 million inauguration haul, officially the biggest presidential suck-up in history. See you tomorrow.